Welcome to Into the Desert, where we discuss relevant issues with respect and without finger pointing. I'm Larissa Munz.
I'm Elgin Hushbeck.
We're still getting started here, so please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, or if you have any questions, please comment down below.
I notice you've been getting your kids ready for school starting, and I know you have some thoughts on that. So as a young mother, what are your thoughts on education, and what do you have to deal with these days? That's certainly vastly different than what I had to deal with my children.
I think in some ways there's a lot of similarities, but there are definitely a lot to consider. So obviously my two kids are adopted, and they both come with their own unique sets of challenges to work through. My daughter is in 8th grade now, finally, and it's the final year of middle school, and the school that she's currently going to is actually elementary middle school combined, so it's the final year at her school, and so it's a big transition, and we're starting to look at high school, and I'm very concerned about my options for high school. The school systems, the way they are set up right now, are limiting me to fitting into this box. And my daughter doesn't fit into the box. And we had a really bad experience with public school before COVID hit, where my daughter figured out how to not go to school. She would go to school, and when they did anything she didn't like, which was anything other than computer class and music class and art class, she would throw a temper tantrum. And that would allow her to go out into the hallway to calm down for a few minutes, and then she would wander the hallway for the rest of the day. And she didn't learn anything. And we had multiple conversations with the school, multiple conversations with the teachers. We would bring in her therapist. We would bring in outside people to help. We had her in special classes to help with her learning disabilities. And after 6 months, the teacher basically said, I have 27 other kids. I can't deal with your daughter, which means it was okay for her to throw temper tantrums and leave class just because she didn't want to learn. And I was very lucky at the time that I was able to enroll her into private school, which is where she is right now. But the private high schools are double the cost. And I have been lucky to get a scholarship for her to help with the tuition in privates or in the elementary school area. But I'm not going to be able to get that when I go into the high school area. And so it would actually cost me triple, quadruple. And I think that's cost prohibitive. And those schools are designed to help give her the extra attention she needs where the public school isn't. But I think at this point, I'm stuck putting her into public school, and I'm frightened that she's going to fail. It's a recipe for disaster when she's not going to be able to get the support that she needs to be able to focus, because she needs someone that's going to say, nope, come on, you got to pay attention. Nope, sorry, we're not going to accept that behavior here.
Yeah. So how's it with your son?
He has his own challenges. I think he does good in either environment, but when he was in public school, he was literally in a fight club. I can't tell you how many times he would come home with a bloody nose because they would punch each other in the nose to see if their nose would bleed.
What grade was this?
This was in 1st grade.
Yeah, 1st grade fight club. That's always a lot of fun.
Yes. So then COVID hit, and his special needs teacher basically dropped off at the face of the planet. And again, the private school where my daughter was going has a full-time special ed teacher. And so they were able to take my son, and honestly, he has gone from being behind in every single class to almost fully caught up in math. He's kind of at the low end of his grade level in math, and he's 1 grade level behind in his reading and English comprehension. And even though he's no longer actually in the special needs program, he still gets that support, and he's thriving, and he's got just the best group of friends. And I've still got a whole nother year for him before he goes to high school, but at least with him, half of his friends would go to the same high school he would go to. And that helps with the transition because then I know at least he's going to be with a good group of friends. And hopefully the academic part will be a little bit better for him. He did fairly good until his special needs teacher vanished for COVID. So I'm hoping that that transition will be less of a shock for him.
Okay. Yeah, it's one of the problems with our current system is it's a very top-down, one-size-fits-all approach. And while they do try to have a little bit of flexibility, a lot of public schools can't do it, which is why education is failing. If you fit the mold, you do all right. If you're in a good school system, you do all right. But if you're not, for whatever reason, if you don't fit the cookie cutter, then you're going to suffer. And, when you only have one choice, you only have one choice. So, you can go out like you have done and put your kid in private schools, which are, by definition, much more flexible, and the parent is really in charge. Because if you have a private school, the parent is the one making the choice to put the child into that school, and the parent is the one driving the education. Whereas when you're in public school, you don't pay. You're not really a customer in the normal sense. They get their money from the state, and they're more concerned with pleasing politicians that fund their programs than the parents who send their children, because they figure you're trapped, and you kind of are.
Yeah, and they're more concerned with test grades and pushing your kid along. And it's really scary when you have a child who gets distracted very easily. And if it's hard, they just want to give up, and they need someone to motivate them. And you don't necessarily get that option or even that support in the public school. At least I didn't in the previous. And we've kept her for public school in the summer as a way of seeing how well she does. But she does the same kind of thing. I mean, she's not getting temper tantrums and walking the halls anymore, but she's not really paying attention in class either, and there's no accountability to it. I had an experience over last summer where my daughter was in class and they needed this app, and the school didn't tell me I was required to bring a tablet or she needed a laptop or she needed any sort of special equipment. So I didn't get her any special equipment. And apparently there's this app that they needed to do the work, and she didn't have the app on her phone. And I'm like, well, if you let the teacher know, I'm happy to install it on your phone so that you can use it. The teacher never reached out to me. The teacher never called me. So she had an entire semester where she wasn't able to do the work except sitting with a friend, which meant she didn't do the work.
Yeah, it's sometimes I think we expect our children to be adults when it comes to school, and we don't actually treat them as the children that they actually are. So yeah. So what is your expectations for how would you solve this if you were in charge of education and could pass a wand and make something happen?
I don't know if there's any single answer. I think being able to give parents the choice. I mean, there's a lot of money that I'm putting into my taxes and other people are putting into their taxes that goes to public schools. And then it's like, I don't get a say. You're taking this money to educate my child, but if I don't put my child in the public school system, that money is not actually being used to educate my child. So I know they've got a lot of I think it's called a backpack program now. It used to be called school choice, vouchers, whatever name you want to call it, at least having money that goes with the kid so that parents have an option in their schooling. I think also not making schools the test-focused college, we got to get these tests because if you get these tests and we check these boxes, then you're going to make it into this college and you can have this career as a doctor or a lawyer. And I think even in society, we're not teaching anybody, kids, college students, whatever, the skills that are needed to succeed in business, because very few of us are doctors and lawyers and scientists that would require this very rigid, very test-oriented research structure that is kind of what people assume that you need when you're going to school. And we're seeing that in the fact that welders are hard to find because nobody wants to do an apprenticeship program to go into welding. We have college students. When I had my previous job and I was hiring, you'd get someone fresh out of college or you'd get an intern. And the simple fact of, you have to accept a meeting invite. You don't just get it and ignore it. Like, your email is your job. You have to respond back. You have to accept that. And it's simple skills like that that aren't being taught because, well, no, we had to check the box. And so I think relooking at what we're trying to teach our children, what we're trying to teach our college students, and the direction and the usefulness of those skills, I think needs to be readjusted. And I don't know if the government can do that, but allowing parents a little bit more choice in how they raise their children and how they educate their children to make their child successful. Because in the end, that's what the goal needs to be. We need to be able to make sure that our children are successful human beings. And checking a box doesn't necessarily ensure that your child is going to be successful.
Yep. Well, I think one of the real struggles with government is that there are two ways to approach things, and government tends to look at top-down approaches where they want to centralize the problem. And we've seen that with education. We've seen them in the 1970s. They began the Department of Education. It didn't exist until then. And they want to, every problem is further centralization, which moves control further and further and further away from the people. Whereas an alternative approach is what we're seeing now sweep through a lot of states is the backpack programs. It's to allow parents choice and opportunity. And anytime you allow people choice and opportunity, you basically allow a market system that will approve. You will have parents with special needs children, and they will go to special needs schools. You'll have kids who are interested in math and science. They'll go to math and science-oriented schools. You'll have kids who are interested in literature or arts, and they'll have schools that are more geared towards them. So instead of trying to take all the children and mold them into the one-size-fits-all cookie cutter that we see in a lot of public education because of its top-down approach, you'll have a much more growing and vibrant system where you can select a school that works well for your child. And if you're in a school like you were in a school, your children were having problems, the school was not responsive, you were able to pull them out and put them into a private school that was actually able to deal with them in a much more beneficial way. And if all parents had that choice, you would see a general overall improvement in all education. And I think that's a major thing that has to happen. It's not that government has to get out of it. It's not public versus private. It's how can we provide parents like you, who have problems with their children and are struggling with the educational needs of your children. How can we give you more choice and more options?
Yeah. And I think, sometimes it's not even just about the money, because it's about the school day. It's about, getting your kids to school, getting your kids home from school. How do you manage food and, the equipment that's required? Knowing what my kids need for school every single year is a nightmare because, well, this class needs this calculator and this class needs this laptop, but this class needs this technology. It's like, it's a huge burden for any parent to navigate. And some schools, they have the funding to be able to provide their children with netbooks. And some schools require that you provide your kid a tablet. And each school is different. Each program is different. And each year from class to class, the technology that's being used is different. And that was one of the biggest confusions as a parent I had when I'm trying to help my kid with their homework is, well, this was on this program. And, well, okay, how do we get to that program? I don't know. It was on the netbook that we have in class. Well, if it's homework, then did you get to take your netbook home? No, we're not allowed to bring those home. Okay, so is there a login where I can log in for my It should not be that complicated to do your math homework.
Yeah. What happened to the days of pencil and paper? And
Exactly. Like, I'd even be happy if they just gave me a whiteboard. Like, okay, we'll just put some numbers on a whiteboard and have you do it that way, or flashcards. It's so confusing for parents on so many levels. And then to add the fact that you're stuck with whatever school you happen to live in. Where did that become a good model?
Yeah, if you're in a good school district with good schools, you do fine, and education is fine, and the public system is great. And if you're in a failing school or a school that has lots of problems, your kid suffers, and your kid shouldn't have to suffer because the school district is having problems. And I've heard for a long time, well, let's just fix the school system. Well, we've had several generations of kids go through bad schools, and the schools somehow never seem to get fixed.
And they keep trying to draw district lines to even out, so it's not all bad neighborhoods going to one school and good neighborhoods going to another school. At least in where I live, they've tried to divide it out. So there isn't really a bad school and a good school, but that doesn't give me warm fuzzies about my kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not a matter of district. It's a matter of sometimes the schools. You have this you have government agencies that become problematic and can't seem to fix themselves. You have corporations that have problems and can't seem to fix themselves. Although there you have a market system, and those corporations tend to go out of business. So it's a well-known problem. It exists well beyond government, but unfortunately at this point it's the children and of course the parents through the children that are suffering and have to deal with this problem. And it's been a problem since I had kids, and it seems to be getting worse.
Thank you for listening to Into the Desert, exploring the wilderness of thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe and put your comments below. Remember, be civil. We want to foster discussion and not division.